Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, the ups and downs, and how to navigate life with kids on your own while keeping sane. Covering subjects such as domestic violence through to fussy eaters and solo dating. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. My next guest is the CEO of a not-for-profit organisation and has been helping and offering relevant practical support to Australian families through radio broadcasts, preventative educational programs, seminars and counselling. Their aim is to help strengthen Australian families, regardless of their religion, politics, socioeconomic status, culture, or age. And they focus on real-life issues, tackling binge drinking, drugs, pornography, depression, bullying, and teenage sexuality head-on. Their major parenting and relationship programs undergo ongoing validation by independent experts and focus on academic and research excellence. Welcome, Brett. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
You're more than welcome.
So, Focus on the Family Australia. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got involved with it, and what Focus on the Family actually does.
Well, how long's your program? Because it's a long story, but I'll give you a brief version.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit about me and then I'll go into Focus. I've been married for 31 years. I've got 3 adult sons. 2 of them are married and my third one is planned to be married at the end of this year, all going well with COVID.
Wow.
I've got 2 grandchildren and that is just a delight for our world. We do a ministry together with my wife at Focus on the Family. But prior to that, my wife's been a teacher for 25 years. I was a nurse, a critical care nurse and majored in intensive care and accident and emergency. So for me to have a really good day, someone had to have a really bad day.
Yeah,
I love the blood and the guts and the chaos, and I love that. And then I also love being able to help people in their bedside and their families, supporting them during that time.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 15 years. And then I was invited to become a children's pastor at a very large church. And I worked as a school chaplain during that time. And I worked there for about 12 years. And it was a very large ministry, helping families and trying to instill in them high values and really helping families thrive in that stage. But then I was also applied for a job at Focus on the Family. And Focus on the Family have been part of my world from a very early age. I remember reading many of the psychologist books by the name of James Dobson. And some people love him, some people don't like him, but he had some really sound, very, very practical advice. And we did a lot of his parenting advice into our world, and then now to work for an organisation that I was greatly helped by. It's quite a pinch myself moment because it's an organisation, and we're only small, but we've got a big reach, and we do a lot in the area of radio. We're in about 750 radio stations, community radio stations across Australia, a lot in the regional areas. We created a YouTube channel. We've got our website, which has got a wealth of different resources, our social media platforms. We've also created a Netflix type of platform that has really practical advice on parenting, mental health, sexuality, all things that people need some very helpful advice. And I know that, people say, yeah, I know I should read that thing or I listen to that or watch that, but they don't do that. There's sometimes a disconnect because we know we can do better with more information. And we're here to provide helpful information. And I would like to think that we're more in the prevention game rather than the solutions at the bottom of the end of the cliff. Because people are going through, and many of your listeners may have that situation. They wish they'd put things into place, or their significant other put things in place to avoid those things happening, to disintegrate their relationship and the challenges or the collateral damage for their families. And so we're in the business of trying to help families before they become a crisis.
Yeah, and look, I know you guys through your YouTube channel, so I love the fact that you do 1-minute snippets, basically, which are great because they're like bite-sized snippets that give great information on just different parenting issues that you may come across. And so it's great for me, because I just go, I need to look at that because I've got that issue.
Yeah, people's attention span is a little bit less, and so they don't read as much, they don't watch as much, but that has changed. I mean, if it's good content, people do get engaged. But a lot of people want their time poor, or they choose to be time poor. And so things that are in bite-sized pieces, our radio, we do 1-minute slots. We do a lot of 25-minute programs similar to yours. And and they can go in a bit deeper, but predominantly a lot of people just need that little bit of encouragement or that little bit of challenge, and it can really change their trajectory in their relationships, in their parenting, or in life in general.
Yeah, it's just adding more tools into your toolbox as a parent, and as a person as well, because it's not just, you don't just cover off parenting as well, you cover off relationships and, personal development and things like that as well, which is great. It's sort of a plethora of information that you sort of cover, which is brilliant.
We like to call ourselves like a one-stop shop from birth to the grave. There'll be something for everyone that will help someone in that going through a different age and different stage, and help them where they're at. And as you said, we provide, parenting is one thing, but then, if you say the word family, where do you start and where do you stop?
Wow.
It's so broad. It's so broad.
Yeah, in this day and age, it is. There's blended families, there's single parent families, there's what I would call the normal nucleus of a family, where there's like mum, dad, and the kids and stuff, and the grandparents, etc. But there was so many, that's the world we live in. It's a colourful and amazing world that we live in. So, that there's same-sex families now, which is great. And so, they all go through
different issues. And it could be mental health, it could be sexuality issues, it could be addictions, and it could be just simply how to communicate more effectively, how to handle conflict and resolve conflict in a much healthier way. And then it could be finances. And so, we try and provide as much resources in a practical way and not be too heavy-handed. But, hey, if you change, as I said before, someone's trajectory by 1 or 2 degrees, they'll end up in a far different place. And that's what we're here to do.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, what hurdles do you see that families actually are coming to you? And I mean, I know both you and I are locked down in COVID lockdowns at the moment, but what hurdles are you seeing families come to you for help on? What issues are you getting?
It could be a number of things. It could be infidelity. It could be narcissism. You'd be surprised how much that has increased. Emotional abuse, not just physical abuse. Yeah. We see a number of them just grappling with, how to talk to their kids about the big issues. And how to navigate a complex world. I mean, if you talk about sexuality, it's complex enough. And then to add another layer of gender fluidity and transgenderism to a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, it does make it very complicated. And how do you, communicate that to your child in a way that is not, looking down at someone and caring for them and valuing them as a person, but understanding that, it's not as black and white and it's not as clear in our day and age. And especially when you're trying to communicate that to children, that makes it even more difficult. And the other issue is just simply, as I said, life gets in the way, people drift apart, and it may not be intentional, but busyness of work and life, financial stress has added another dimension. And at the moment with COVID, and those people who are listening to this are in that space, that fatigue is setting in, and that low level of unmotivation. Languishing is a very common word at the moment, and people aren't as productive and just not as motivated to go out and exercise or to do things, because we can't really do very much. And so that has crept in. And unfortunately, during this COVID stage, many relationships have unfortunately disintegrated. And it's very sad that in that very fragile and very, you're more vigilant, and it's a chaotic time to make those lifelong decisions. And it may be that they just simply, hey, let's take a time out. Let's see if we can work out how we can show grace to one another when we're in each other's space and in each other's face.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it more seriously when things have settled down. But, we're seeing lawyers being submitted a lot of papers for divorces at the moment. I've got a friend of mine who said he's got 6 of his mates that have all divorced in this period of time. And I'm thinking how sad that is, that, it is a season and everything is a season, but if they can just navigate that, because we do know that, it's an expensive ordeal financially, but it's also expensive relationally, psychologically. It puts an enormous strain on children during this time. And unfortunately, that's what's taking place. So it's anything and everything of all the issues that people are faced with.
Yeah, no, wow. So, that's a lot of, like COVID does, I can't think of the word this morning, but escalate a lot of underlying issues that are there. And sometimes it is about taking that step back and taking a deep breath and reassessing to actually overcome those issues as such. And it is
there were some fractures already. Yeah. If there were some fractures already in the relationship or strains, COVID has only just opened them all up.
Yes. So, okay. So, is there anything key that you're covering at the moment with single parents as such? Because this podcast is about single parents and things like that. Do you find what's the top 3 issues that you're getting? And like you've just said, like your friend has got six people who have now divorced and separated in this crazy COVID period that we're in. Like, there's challenges around all of that. And there's different challenges with different situations. Every divorce, every separation is different. You've got domestic violence situations, which if you've got children, my mind is that's the healthiest to move away and separate. If there's violence or emotional abuse, then that is a healthy thing to separate and get the children away from that situation. But what are you seeing from a single parent perspective? How are you helping single parents?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I mean, especially if you're looking at a highlighted one is, how do you connect with your spouse when you've got different value systems and different belief systems than you, or different ways of parenting? I mean, it's hard enough when you're doing it together, when you've got a different way, a different of opinion, but then when you've got, different homes and different roofs over their heads, and they have a different way of addressing things, and how it's confusing for the child to come back, from being at dad's or mum's house, and it's got a different way of doing things. And so we've done a number of radio interviews on this topic. There's an organisation called Shaken Not Stirred. Or blended not stirred, I should say. I think it's like that.
Okay.
And anyway, we've done a number of those type of discussions about how to do, either the separation well, because children shouldn't be the pawns in all of this. And they shouldn't be used to relay messages. They shouldn't be the ones that actually have to be the ones that, hey, tell me more what's going on in that household, to be on reconnaissance all the time. No, kids should be kids, and that's what they should be. And then also for the single parent at home spending time with the kid, you shouldn't lean too much on them, because they're kids. You shouldn't rely on them emotionally. There's a lot of things in that space that trying to help clarify for single parents to do that well. I do have from time to time the difficulty for dads having access to their kids, and that's become a really difficult time and a really hurting time. And we also have the situation when, you've already identified the violent side of things, but even if it wasn't violent, we would also encourage couples at times to have what I call a healing separation. When there's conflict all the time, may not be physical or even dangerous, you just don't feel like you're going well. Sometimes you need the catalyst to separate and allow that to be the aha moment to say, you need help. I'm here to support you, but we can't do this together because we're in just so much tension. And I'd always encourage people to be the very best version of themselves. It takes 2 healthy individuals to make a healthy relationship. And so, and then from that point of view, we've actually had a number of people contacting us to say, how do we do it again? How do we start up the next conversation? If I'm going to start going out with another person, how do I bring my children along? If they go into the dating scene again. So that's another thing that we try and help people with, just as beneficial and as practical as possible, and what to look out for. And one of the conversations you should have with your kids, bring them along on the journey. And they have a big say in it, not the end say, but they have a big say because they've been thrust into a situation which they didn't want. Now they're going to be thrust into a situation where they may not want again because they just got into a nice little routine and rhythm. And it can be very complicated, and we have to be very sensitive to all stakeholders in this journey.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, I look at it, me being separated from my ex-partner, I look at it and think, well, my son loves his dad like I love my parents and my grandparents. So it doesn't matter that I don't love his dad. It's not that I don't like his dad, but I'm not in love with his father anymore. And therefore, but it doesn't change that he loves his dad. He loves and adores his dad. So, the fact that I don't shouldn't affect him. And I shouldn't influence what his thoughts and views are on his father as such. Yeah. The same as his father shouldn't do that regarding myself. So it's like keeping our situation and our relationship out of my son's situation and relationship with that. So I completely agree with you. It's a minefield to navigate regarding a little person's emotions, and they sometimes come out with the key things like, I hate you, mummy, and I want to stay with daddy, because you've given them a boundary that they don't like. And and so that's, they come out with these things and they don't realize what they're saying. So yeah, it's just dealing with all of those situations. So how do people find you as such? So I found you guys via YouTube and watching your videos and stuff like that on YouTube, and I know you've got a website and things, but how do they get referred to you? Do they just find you by searches?
It could be a search through the website. If people got a specific issue and they come across us, they can stumble upon us, and you stumbled upon it. Yeah. Many people know us through the radio. So if you're listening to the radio, a lot of community radio stations across Australia and in all the major capitals and all the regional centres, there's somewhere that you could probably hear us along on the radio. And that's where most people hear us from. And then they would either go to our Facebook page, and it might be some practical advice and maybe a little tip that, you can do it in one sentence. Then there can be the aspect of, our family cast application, which is another area, but we don't get referred to. But people do refer to us because they might know us and trust us, and earning that trust and being able to deliver on that. We, as I said, we're a small team, but we sort of bat above our pay grade because we're trying to help as many people. And so, we do what I would call pastoral care, not counselling, because, counselling is a much more formal position to be in. And if I might just do what I call a triage, take a phone call. In fact, I've just left a phone call just prior to this interview with a woman who's got a husband who's gaslighting her and her. And so and she's quite fragile at the moment, and she rang us because she knows us somewhere along the line, or she's been referred to us and trusts us for some helpful advice. Now, we can't journey with her. It's a triage situation, and we would encourage her to get involved in, a community group, or go and seek some professional counselling, or try and find a group of small but trusted friends, not a huge group, that can help come alongside you, not solve the issue, but come alongside you. Because unfortunately, many people are looking for that quick answer, and it's never a quick answer. There's never a silver bullet because it's multiple layers of complex issues. And sometimes, unfortunately, you could do everything right, and your partner chooses to go another pathway. And abuses you and treats you poorly, speaks disrespectfully to you, as you were saying before, in front of your children. And but I would try, even though they might do it to you, it doesn't give you an excuse or carte blanche to actually do it to them, because we need to, do unto others that you'd have them do unto you. Yes. That's a great philosophy in life. And we've got to be very careful and not allowing our our feelings to get the better of us. Treat each other with respect, because that is actually giving you a great role model. Your kids are going to watch how you handle stress. They're going to watch you handle conflict. They're going to watch you how you handle finances and do a work ethic. We talk about family of origin. This blimp, and it does have an effect. It will leave a scar with your kids through separation and divorce. But as you navigate that, and if you do it together, and ultimately, if you have your children's best interests at heart, you will watch your P's and Q's. You will treat one another with respect. You will be courteous when you see and interact with them. And you can do it. And I've heard and have seen when families do that well, they may not love each other, but they learn to be friends in a different format. And in fact, if they've repartnered, they've actually formed really healthy relationships because they've actually put the kids ahead of their own interests.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think you said it very well previously. It's about being the best you can be. It's about being the better person. We're adults at the end of the day, so
unfortunately, that's it. We talk about common. I know. Common sense is not that common, and we also talk about we're adults. Yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't always become evident.
No, well, look, there's a lot of we're complex human beings. At the end of the day, we are very complex. There are so many different colors, facets, thoughts, emotions. We've also, and I think you touched on it, we've also been scarred by our how our parents have been brought up, how our grandparents were brought up, all of the various different situations that they've been involved. I mean, our grandparents, well, my grandparents, some people listen to this, grandparents might not have been involved, but I'm pretty old. Our grandparents were involved in wars, and those wars were world wars that affected a lot of people and scarred a lot of people. And although PTSD has only really just come around in the last 10, 15 years, we had our grandparents may have been suffering from PTSD all of those years ago, and I would imagine a lot of them would have been suffering from some element of PTSD, come back from the war, brought up families, and then the scars from what happened in the war has been, being able to communicate or whatever has been transferred through the different generations. And thankfully, we're now starting to learn about all of this and how to deal with it, and the various different treatments that people can go through to heal themselves and to stop this cycle as such. It's crazy how all of these things affect how we bring our children up.
And you might have said to yourself, I'll never do like that. I'll never be like my mother. I'll never be like my father. Unless you make an intentional decision, getting good information and putting those into practice, you tend to default to the things you're familiar with. And you might have said, I'm exactly like I didn't want to do that. Or you can do the other side of things is, if you had a very disciplinarian, very autocratic, very strict parenting, you might do the pendulum swinging the completely other way to compensate, and that's not helpful either. It's a balance of everything, and that's why we try and provide those resources. And as I said, our website is families.org.au, and that's where a lot of people can get some really helpful information.
Yeah, and so do you actually do parenting relationship programs as such? I know because you've got all the videos and everything like that, which is really helpful, but do you actually hold programs online or
that's what we've created a few series of videos. Because of COVID, we've actually put a lot more in the digital space because people can get access to it. We're just about to launch one, primary school parenting. We've done one early age parenting, or talking about the early years, the first 4 years. And I've done a whole series on how to talk to your kids about sex, how to talk to your kids about, mental health, how to talk to your kids about technology and social media and dating. So they're going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks and months to be able to provide that service. And because and I love speaking in front of an audience. I get energized with it. They can interact with you. I've been doing a lot of Zoom ones lately, just online. It's never quite the same because you can't really, there's only so many thumbnails you can actually look at to see if you're engaging the audience. Whereas in a face-to-face presentation, and sometimes people just need that little bit of guidance and encouragement to say, hey, you're doing okay. You're not that bad. And I find that most people who come to seminars, they're actually doing all right. They just want to fine tune a few things. I tend to find the biggest issues is just that lack of motivation or that apathy. She'll be right, mate. And that actually creeps into relationships. It creeps into your parenting and family dynamics. If you just take one another for granted, it takes work to make a relationship successful, and it takes work to be an effective and engaged and a welcoming parent for your children. Yeah. So you can have those tough conversations, those boundaries, as you said earlier, and put those into practice, because your kids will actually thrive when they know what the boundaries are, and that they know what the values are that you're instilling in them, and you're role modeling how to deal with all of life's issues. And so if you're doing those things well, kids aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for real, authentic, and genuine. And if you can do that, and when you own up, when you do mistakes, and when you stuff up and you say, look, I overreacted, I yelled, I'm really sorry, would you please forgive me? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Because if you're aiming to be the perfect parent, you've already failed, because there are no perfect parents.
No, I completely agree with you. There are no perfect parents. And look, at the end of the day, I think we can't beat ourselves. We're all trying to be the best person we can be, and there are all different things that impact our lives. I think having an awareness, and I think the things that you guys do help with just allowing people to take that step back, have an awareness and go, oh, maybe I could have said that a different way. That gives the tools that you, and even with the 1 minute snippet videos, and I know it's 1 minute, but some of the tools that you actually suggest on those just help for that. Oh, maybe I need to change my state, or maybe I need to take a step back, take a deep breath. Like you said, these are not aliens that we've just produced. These are little human beings, right? At the end of the day, they don't come from a different planet, although sometimes I do wonder. But, they're human at the end of the day. So all the feelings and emotions and everything that we have, they're going through as well. They have them as well. They have their own thoughts and opinions and views, even if they are 5, which my son is, but he's amazing at some of the things that he comes out with. Apparently we're not going to Starbucks because he's sort of found out some things about Starbucks that he doesn't like, which is great. Mummy's happy.
Well, they can have the little kids can have big emotions, and I think we need to treat them. And they don't come with an instruction manual. They're also unique. No. And if you have 2 or more children, you think they come out of the same pod, that you should be able to parent them the same. You don't. They have to be uniquely parented and find out what makes them tick, what drives them, what motivates them, and what works with one child doesn't work with another child. And, you've got a strong-willed child, and you've got those who are a bit more carefree. Then you've got the type A personalities, perfectionists, and they can't do any wrong. And you think, well, I did that well. Why can't the other one be like that? And then if you get into the comparing and contrasting, that's not a good service either. So there's a lot of things that if you get a little bit of information on different issues, you'll circumvent before they get out of hand, especially when you're trying to build that relationship. Like, for example, when a teenager's becoming, 13, 14, they go through that process of individuation, and you've got this perfect child. They have a great, warm, welcoming, engaged, conversational style parenting, and then suddenly they just snap and they go, I back off, mum and dad, I don't need you anymore. And so you don't know where, and you might have thought they were an alien, you might have thought, but understanding that that's what they're going through. They're trying to find out where they fit into the world. Don't back off too far. And you are their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain where you think rationally, and you say, have you considered? But if you react, then you're going to shut the conversation up. But if you respond, you're watching your tone, you're watching your volume. All these little things can make all the difference with building a healthy relationship with your child. Yeah,
and also I think looking at the other side of the coin, and I think I interviewed a guy, Cody Butler, quite recently. Regarding teenage, because he deals with a lot of work with teenagers who basically just want to stay in their bedroom and not do much, and their parents are going, well, they're not motivated. And he sort of turns it around to the teenager and goes, well, how are you working with your parents as such? Because when they go, oh, my parents don't understand me, do you actually understand your parents? And he sort of tries to turn it around as well, because it's a scary time for parents. And I think, and I look back at my teenage years and I go, oh my God, how horrendous was I for my parents? But I didn't even think about them. I was like, didn't think about how scary it was for them that I'd gone from this child that, was their baby as such to, trying to find my own way in the world, like you said, and individual, etc. Trying to find my individuality and where I was. Like, it's a scary time. Like, you've got this lovely, gorgeous child that was, you were their world, and now you're like not their world. Yeah. And and they're trying to create their own world, and so that's a scary transition regarding that as well. So yeah, no, that's cool. So do you and I know you work with a lot of people and you do these programs that you have you got anything that's going to be running soon, or where do people go on the website and can they access these?
I'm actually running a marriage seminar at the moment, an online marriage conference.
Oh, wow.
So that's been it's over 5 weeks. We just did a seminar last week on marriage and finances and intimacy. So there was a couple of webinars. At the moment, I am just doing the planning and strategy and budgets for 2022. And that's where I'm going to be doing a lot of effort and energy in fundraising. And so a lot of my content is going to be put on the shelf for a while. And because it's all very well to have great content, but unless it's being able to be funded. So a lot of my energy is going to be putting in that area. But I am, going to the radio studio and creating some more content that will be helpful. We just did 20 more family minutes for our YouTube channel. So that's being done, some post-production work. So I'm still doing a lot of stuff, but it will be good over time. But it is a challenge to know where to put my energies into. But I'm speaking at a couple of schools on, that doing it via Zoom for parents on how to talk to the kids about sex. Cool. Yeah, and so those type of things I really enjoy, and I find that it really answers the questions that people have. And but if I do get a whole number of people contacting me at the same time, and there seems to be a theme that people are saying, hey, we need this, then it might be able to create some content and more to explore those options.
So people could actually get in contact with you and feed back to you and say, hey, I'm finding this really difficult. Do you have content on that? Or, maybe could you create content on it, or come and talk to our school, or you're more than, well, it's a bit difficult in COVID, but
when COVID first hit last year, I did Facebook Live, and I did 2 a week for 25 weeks. So I created about 50 different Facebook Live. That was exhausting. And I did a topic every 3 days, basically, on various issues, on all these things in half an hour. I just give it a snapshot. And that seemed to be really quite positive. And I need to probably go back there and doing those things. And they just take time and energy. But I do enjoy it because it's a much needed in our culture today.
Oh, very much so. Like what you guys are doing is awesome. It is about helping families to thrive, I think, because and thank God we've got people like yourselves doing this. So look, I know you're a not-for-profit organization. So how do you get funding as such?
Mainly through donations. That's our predominant one. People, use our content, and then they might, become a partner of us, and they might just give it, $5 or $10 a month, and more of those type of things. There's some people who are in a much more economic position, and they might donate thousands of dollars. They've been benefits because they've benefited from it. They want to continue to be a blessing to others. And so that's the main one. I do a bit of public speaking, so that brings in some revenue. We sell some books. Like, for example, there's one called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and that's about pornography, how to talk to your 10-year-old about pornography, for example. Yeah. And it's a picture book that your kid reads and you read with them, and how to start that conversation about that. So that's been a really big seller for us. But there are only little things that we do, but predominantly it's going to be donations, and I apply for grants from every now and then, but they take a lot of work to apply for grants. Yeah,
no, I can imagine. I've seen that. I have actually seen the book you're talking about, which I think is awesome, because being a single mom and having a boy, and I think that's the different. I mean, when we were talking about children and the fact that, you can have 3 kids, you've got 3 boys, and I'm imagining that 3 boys completely different, all completely different, unique individuals in themselves with their own skills and their own, positive traits and negative traits, just like my child. And my child's got 2 sisters, and so girls and boys are completely different as well. And being a single mum, and then thinking about trying to approach the subject of things like pornography with my son, which to me is a real, I'm going, how am I going to do this? I mean, he's 5 at the moment, so I'm hoping it's not even in his head. But yeah, exactly. So things like your book, I just looked and went, wow, okay, this could help me a lot.
Yeah. I'd encourage parents to be much more proactive rather than reactive.
Yes.
Like, we've got a downloadable resource. It's a free resource that on how to talk to your kids about sex, the ages and stages, and it's starting at 5. How to talk about their body using the real words. By the age of about 8 or 9 or 10, most boys would have been exposed to pornography. And in fact, I've got a friend of mine who's a child psychologist, and he's dealing with 8-year-olds who are addicted to pornography. So somewhere along the line, you might think that it's further ahead, but because of the technology, it's so accessible, and they might just stumble upon it, and it's curious and it's unusual. They don't know. It makes them feel yucky, but it makes them feel happy as well. And what do they do with this information? And so being more proactive, it's like talking to your child, a daughter, their first menstrual cycle. When do you have that conversation? You shouldn't wait until they're 13. You should have it about the age of 9 and 10, because they might have their first menstrual period, at school. And if you don't have that conversation with them, they'll think that they've got cancer and dying, and it can cause more trauma. So we talk about, it's never too early to talk to your kids about the big issues at an age-appropriate level, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when your children will be exposed to things. And so it's those little things, and it's not a one-off conversation, it's an ongoing dialogue.
Yeah. And I think it's not about it's about being very natural and very calm about when you have that conversation with them, and not actually making it sound yucky, if you see what I mean, or making there be a stigma about it. Look, at the end of the day, everything that you've just spoken about is all natural. We all deal with it. It's just that our own, I don't know, society or whatever puts these connotations in your head, and it could have come from your culture, or it could have come from how you were parented and stuff like that, that we need to actually just take a step back, chill out, and go, this is natural. This is not like something that's yucky. No. We've got to deal with it. And I agree with you. I sit there, you've just shocked me, because I was going, 10 will be, I think 10 will be. And now you're saying 8, and I'm going, wow, I hadn't thought about that. But technology, makes our children progressed as our children more quickly than it would do at our age. Really, when you think back, I'm talking 20, really in the last 20 years, the technology has gone on so quickly that, really when I think back to when I was a kid, we had one computer in the school, basically. There was no, the internet was only just a, sparkle in somebody's eye, and, mobile phones were the size of bricks, and we didn't have our computer in our phone as such. And there were no iPads, and we were only just getting the bloody iPod. So, things like that we just don't think about it. So I agree with you. If you think I need to have a conversation with my child at 13, maybe take 3 years off and start that conversation then as such.
Well, I used to go and speak in a lot of schools, and issues that I'd be speaking to the 16 and 17-year-olds, I'm now speaking to the 12 and 13-year-olds. And then
wow.
I actually remember going to a group of grade 5 students and talking about puberty, and I tell you what, they were really engaged. You get the sillies, the giggles, but then once you're actually giving them really helpful advice, they're leaning into the conversation. I spoke to a group of grade 6 boys about periods. Well, these are boys, and they're going, really? And people think, well, why do you talk about that? Because then they have a greater understanding of women, and they have a greater empathy when they go through their premenstrual cycles, and their empathy level and their understanding just went through the roof that's how we should educate. I mean, that is the idea of treating one another with respect. And if they have a greater understanding, because otherwise they're going to be learning it from pornography, which is violent, degrading, dehumanizing, criminal. And that's where they're doing the greatest amount of learning. And girls are learning that way as well. They're thinking that this is normalized behavior. I have to put up with this. And there's nothing about intimacy. It's all fact is that, you can go straight and do the deed. And and I don't want to be graphic on the radio, but I obviously can on the podcast. But there is a lot of things that are taking place in our culture that has now been normalized, and it is just not the idea, and it's not helping set up people to have healthy relationships, because it's distorting their view of this virtual interaction on an image, and they don't know how to function in the real. And so it's putting a lot of strain on relationships and expectations that are not met. And people aren't happy, so they say, bye-bye, I'll find someone who will. And that's not a way.
Well, this is my concern with dating apps and things like that. And it's a whole podcast that I want to do on that. But like, my concern with dating apps is it's very much like online shopping. And I go, but dating isn't about shopping, right? I can have a pair of red shoes, black shoes, white shoes, whatever. But that's not, you're shopping for your human being, right? That's a whole different, but it is Tinder is swipe left, swipe right, swipe, I like the look of those shoes, I don't like the look of those shoes, it's just, and so it's making it very much like a purchasing
it's very
thing. And also people
but the research would say that about 1 in 10 relationships are starting online now, and that's growing. That's significantly growing. And I know a number of people who have been have met online and now married, including my son, who met his now fiance online, but she didn't put a picture. He was engaged with what she wrote, and it turns out she didn't write it. It was her sister who wrote it. But then they started talking on the phone without seeing each other face to face, and they found out a little bit about each other, and they talked about the non-negotiables that they wanted to bring in the relationship. Well, it was basically a relationship built in heaven, and they are just so complementary of one another, and so it's turned out well for them. But I do know what you're saying. It can be very superficial. You're looking on the outside, but we should look on the inside, their character, because we miss out on a lot of people who have got great character. They're sincere, they're compassionate, but they may not look the perfect person, but really they may be the perfect person. So we need to look past the outside and look on the inside and get to know somebody far more. But I think it's really important to know yourself and what you can and can't put up with, and what your values are, what your beliefs are, what are your non-negotiables, and what you're prepared to put up with. Because if things you think, oh, that's cute, it's a little bit annoying, but it's cute, while you're dating, then you get married, it's not so cute anymore, and it really annoys you, and it causes more tension. So that's the reason why if I had my way, I would do what I call pre-engagement counselling. Before you sign on the dotted line, before you actually say, will you marry me, I would actually start, are you ready for the whole concept of being selfless? Because being married, you realize how intuitively and innately we are selfish. Why this person? Are they bringing in the best in you? Are they encouraging you to be the best version of yourself? Are they challenging you and sandpapering those rough edges? And are they doing those things well? But unfortunately, and again, this may be controversial for many of your listeners, a lot of people think the try before you buy mentality. In fact, let's live together, find out if we're compatible, and if it doesn't work out, then we got no strings attached. Well, we're realizing that all the research would actually say that couples who live together don't end up being successful in their relationships. And I think it might be a really controversial thing to say, but the research is actually saying couples who remove that self from, that commitment side of thing, but actually wait till they get married to live together, actually do better, healthier, and have better sex lives, more committed and healthier long-term relationships. And that's what the evidence is actually saying.
Wow. Well, look, I have been married. I was very young when I got married. I was 24. I was divorced by 26, 27. And I have to say to you, and I did live with that person, but I have to say, another thing that I think should be included in all of this premarital counselling is people's concept of what marriage actually means, because it was a massive change living with somebody for 2 years and then getting married, and the concept of what married life should be like from my ex-partner was two sides of the scale, right? Completely different sides of the scale. And I think if we'd have had a conversation prior to getting married about what his view of married life would be like and what a wife was expected to do, etc., I wouldn't have got married. I definitely wouldn't have got married because.
Well, we used to run marriage retreats, and a majority of those came in crisis. And we'd actually ask them, did anyone ever say to you shouldn't get married?
Yeah.
They said, a number of people did, but we were in love. We knew we'll get past those things. And love is not necessarily, love is a commitment, but love is not enough. You need to show that you are willing to lay down your life. I mean, we talk about the vows, for better or for worse, for richer and poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. You know, they aren't just words. They are a vow. And you're saying that before your family and friends. And unfortunately, people say, well, you're not making me happy now. Financial stress, you got sick, it hasn't turned out as well as I would like. So bye-bye, I'll find someone who can. And that's not what a relationship is. I think we all would love to have long-term healthy relationships. There's something about us that actually loves to see a mature age couple walking down the street holding hands. And I haven't met anyone who doesn't say, yeah, I do too. You know, you watch someone walking past someone with holding hands and you look at them behind, you'll see them smiling, because it's something about longevity. And you're saying about your grandparents, there'll be some people who are saying, I want that. I want that. But they don't know how to do it. And I think getting better information, being more involved, more intentional, will help navigate that. And bringing in other people, mentors into your world that can identify your blind spots to find out, if you ask them and you say, look, is this a good match for me? And your parents should be a good, if you have a healthy relationship with your kids, you've earned that right to speak into their life. You can actually flag some areas, but so many times people just say, look, you don't know our love. Our love is pure. It's going to be the best thing ever. And it's just not. Sorry,
at my age now, I go, yeah, okay, that's fine. But okay, whatever. I sort of have gone through the mill a few times and it's lovely and it's great when it all falls together at the beginning. But there's like you said, when you see that, those couple in those 70s or whatever, we go, oh, isn't that awesome? Isn't that what we want? But it takes a lot of work from both sides. It's not about, and I do wonder where we're going, because I do see it a lot about, it's a lot of reflection about, you're not giving me what I want, so I'm going to go because it's all about me. And actually it's not, it's about we.
Working together as a team.
Yeah. And I find, and I talk to a lot of single mums and dads about the domestic violence side of things, and the domestic violence, emotional controlling and all of those sort of things. It's not about the we in any of that. It's about the I, and it's about the person who's controlling because they have their issues that they need to work on. And I'm not saying anyone is bad in any of that situation, but it's just that there are issues that both parties have to work on and move forward. So we're on our best behavior when we're dating. We're on our we're watching our P's and Q's, and that's why we always encourage people to see the 4 seasons, not necessarily 12 months, all the seasons, but actually the seasons of life. How do they cope when they're stressed? How do they cope when there's conflict? What type of relationship and how do they treat their mother or their father? They should be those little areas that you're more in tune to look for those emotional red flags to say, hey, is that going to be good? And we need to go. And I talk about helping someone. I say go in with your eyes wide open, because once you get married, you have to be slightly closed, because if you start looking at all the faults, looking for that perfect person to fulfill your every need, you're going to be destined to fail. And so we talk about complementing each other, not completing. Like that old video of Tom Cruise in Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Well,
No one completes another human being. We need to be able to good, healthy individuals who know our identity that will actually help us move forward. And if we do that, and it can be a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not being in a relationship with somebody who you're scared to actually be honest with and truthful with. You should be in a relationship where you can say, hey, do you know what you did, like, I didn't feel comfortable with, and this was the emotion, and to actually be able to talk that through with somebody. And I do see on a lot of the single mum websites or single parenting websites where people have started dating, and they do put questions like I'm dating this guy and he's doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm thinking these are red flags. I'm going, well, if you think they're red flags, they are red flags. So I'm like going, hey, if you're feeling uncomfortable about something, then it's about, saying stop, take a step back, take a breath. Don't imagine that it's all going to be like rosy colored.
Yeah. We crave relationship. We're designed for relationship. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I would say that people don't settle for second best. It'd be better to be thriving single rather than in a relationship where you feel that you're being squashed. And that is not healthy. And I know a number of single mums and dads who are doing life and being fulfilled and enjoying it to their full, and they're not complicating themselves. I mean, if a person came along and they found that right person, then so be it. But their life hasn't stopped because they haven't got their lifelong partner. Yeah. I've got a friend of mine who's she got divorced. It sounds very similar to yours. Only for a short period of time after getting married, and now she's a foster mum, and she's got a whole community around her helping her navigate this, and so it takes a village to raise a child. And you were talking about with your son having those conversations. You'll find a healthy male role model for him. Because we takes that village to raise a child. We need other people in our life, and it's not that one individual; it's a group of people.
Is exactly what I was going to say. A relationship is not about being in a relationship with a partner, lover, whatever. It's about the relationship you have with all of the people around you. Yeah. So yeah. Look, thank you for telling us about Focus on Families and all of the things that you do, and also this conversation that we've just had about relationships. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on dating and advice on dating at the rate we're going. So I always ask this of my interviewees as such. If you could have a superpower, what would it be, Brett? What superpower would you have?
For me, personally, that's a challenging one.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to, and I might not seem very naive and very noble thing, is that for people to really understand who they are, and they get to become the best version of themselves. And Focus on the Family Australia is a faith-based organisation, and we find that if they have that, they understand who God is in their own life, other things will fall into place. And so if that would be my superpower, be introducing them to the great Creator, and they can find out who He is and be inquisitive and curious. And then through that, they might be able to discover who they are, and they become the very best version of themselves.
Wow. Well, that's an honourable superpower. I can't say anything more than that about it. It's definitely a different superpower. I haven't had that one before, but that's great. No, that's awesome. Look, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. I know you're really busy. You do radio shows and loads of things that you're doing, but thank you very much for coming and talking to us. And I hope you have a fantastic and wonderful day.
Thank you very much. And if we can be of any service, don't hesitate to contact us. Our website's families.org.au.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brett. Awesome. Speak to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you'd like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family on all the usual social media platforms that you're normally on. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content that I know you're going to want to hear, like this. If you want to check out past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or For links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. Have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one's perfect, and we're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single, and Human podcast.